The job listing didn't even have a proper title. It just said, Nocturnal Custodian, St. Jude's Regional Hospital, Sub-Level 3, excellent compensation, high turnover, discretion required. High turnover should have been the first red flag. Excellent compensation should have been the second. But when you're 3 months behind on rent and your diet consists of ramen and tap water, red flags start to look like welcome mats. My name is Leo. Before this, I was a forklift operator at a warehouse until it downsized me into oblivion. So when I got the call for an interview, I threw on my least wrinkled shirt and went. The interview wasn't in some HR office. It was with a man named Arthur, right outside the entrance to the sublevels. The air coming up the concrete stairs was already degrees colder, thick with the cloying chemical sweetness of antiseptic cleaner failing to mask something ancient and organic. Arthur was a husk of a man, probably in his late 60s, but looking 80. His face was a roadmap of exhaustion, his eyes sunken into purple bruises of sleeplessness. "The job is simple," he rasped, his voice like gravel in a blender. "You watch the basement. That's it. From 11:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. You don't clean, you don't file, you don't move anything. You just watch. You're a presence." "Watch for what?" I asked. He gave me a look that was equal parts pity and contempt. "You watch to make sure everything stays settled. The compensation is $100 an hour, cash, in a locker at the end of each week." My jaw almost unhinged. That was more than I made in 2 days at the warehouse. For sitting in a basement? "I'll take it," I said, maybe a little too quickly. A flicker of something, disappointment, crossed his face before it was gone. "Good. Your first shift is tonight. Be here at 11:30 sharp. I'll walk you through it once. Only once. After that, you're on your own." He handed me a single, old-fashioned brass key and a laminated card. "Your life depends on these, don't lose them." That night, I met him as instructed. The main hospital above us was a hive of quiet, controlled activity. Down here, it was a different world. The silence was a physical weight. We descended 2 flights of stairs to sub-level 2, which housed laundry and old records, smelling of dust and detergent. Then, another flight down, behind a heavy steel door marked Morgue, Authorized Personnel Only, was my new kingdom. Sub-level 3. The air hit me like a physical blow. It was frigid, far colder than the floors above, and the smell was stronger. Formaldehyde, bleach, and underneath it all, a coppery, sour tang that my brain screamed was old blood. The main room was a small security office with a thick glass window looking out onto a long concrete corridor. The corridor stretched into darkness, lined on one side by a series of massive stainless steel locker doors, the cold storage units. On the other side were doors to various rooms: Autopsy Suite A, Specimen Storage, Incinerator Control. "This is your post," Arthur said, gesturing to the cramped office. There was a desk, a rotating chair, a bank of 6 black and white security monitors, and an old-school logbook. "You sit here, you watch, but most importantly, you follow the rules." He tapped the laminated card he'd given me. I looked down at it. It was typed, the letters slightly faded. "Night Watch Protocol, Sub-Level 3. Rule 1. You must clock in using the manual punch clock, no earlier than 11:54 p.m. and no later than 11:56 p.m. The timing is not negotiable. Clock out at 7 a.m. exactly. Rule 2. Never, under any circumstances, Turn on the main corridor lights. Your issued flashlight is the only permissible light source outside the office. They do not like the brightness. Rule 3. The office is your sanctuary or sanctuary. The only time you are to leave it is to perform the rounds. Rounds are to be performed at 1 o'clock a.m., 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m. A single, slow walk down the corridor and back. Do not deviate. Rule 4. During your rounds, if you hear a knocking sound from one of the storage lockers, stop. Approach the locker. Knock back firmly twice. No more, no less. Then whisper, "Be still," and continue your round. Do not wait for a response. Rule 5. You may hear sounds from Autopsy Suite A, crying, whispering, the sound of metal tools on a tray. Ignore them. It is residual energy. It is harmless as long as you do not acknowledge it. Rule 6. The door to Autopsy Suite B is to remain locked at all times. The key was disposed of years ago. If you find this door unlocked or ajar, do not investigate. Leave the basement immediately, forfeiting your pay. Some things are not worth the wage. Rule 7. Between the hours of 3:33 a.m. and 4 o'clock a.m., a delivery may occur. It will be 2 orderlies in standard blue scrubs. They will not speak to you. You will not speak to them. They will bring a gurney with a shrouded form. Unlock locker number 12 for them. It is always empty for this purpose. After they have placed the delivery inside and left, you must approach the locker, place your hand on it and say clearly, "Welcome home. May your story find its ending here." This appeases the newcomer. Rule 8. You may see a woman in a vintage nurse's uniform from the 1950s standing at the far end of the hall. She is not real. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to her. She is a warning sign. Her appearance means the others are growing restless. Go back to the office, lock the door, and do not look at the security monitors until sunrise. Rule 9. The most important rule. You will, at some point, hear your name called from the darkness of the corridor. It may sound like a loved one, your mother, a friend, a partner. It is a trap. It is them learning. Never, ever answer. Answering gives them a piece of you. I stared at the card, my blood turning to ice. This had to be a joke. A sick, elaborate hazing ritual for the new guy. You're kidding, right? I laughed, but the sound died in my throat. Arthur's face was utterly serious. He looked ancient and broken. We have had 6 watchmen in the last 2 years. The first 4 didn't follow the rules. The 5th went crazy. I was the 6th. I'm training you so I can finally leave. We don't have these rules to be quaint. We have them because they are the only things that keep the corpses silent. He didn't say another word. He just pointed to the punch clock, which read 11:52 p.m., gave a final weary nod, and ascended the stairs, leaving me alone with the buzzing fluorescent light of the office and the oppressive waiting silence of the morgue. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the clock, 11:54. With a shaking hand, I took my time card and punched in. The ka-chunk of the machine was deafening. My first 2 hours were a masterclass in paranoia. Every hum of the building's foundation, every drip of water in some distant pipe, was a monster in the dark. The security monitors showed only static-laced black and white images. The main corridor, the entrance to Autopsy A, the incinerator door, all still, all empty. I drank my coffee, browsed the web on my phone, and tried to pretend I was just a regular security guard. At 1 a.m., it was time for my first round. My breath plumed in the frigid air as I stepped out of the office. The darkness in the corridor was absolute. I switched on the flashlight Arthur had given me. Its beam seemed pathetic, a tiny spear of light that barely pierced the gloom. The silence was different out here. It felt expectant. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing unnaturally. The steel lockers gleamed dully in my flashlight beam. I could see the condensation clinging to them, see my own breath misting around their handles. I kept my ears pricked, my whole body tense. Nothing. I reached the end of the hall, a blank concrete wall, and turned back. Halfway to the office, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It came from a locker halfway down the row. Locker number 34. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. A dry, bony wrapping from inside the refrigerated steel box. My mind reeled. It's the building settling. It's a machine malfunctioning. But I remembered Arthur's face. I remembered Rule 4. My hand was trembling so hard I could barely make a fist. I walked to locker number 34. The cold radiating from it was intense. I hesitated, then knocked twice on the steel. Knock, knock. The sound was sharp, metallic. For a terrifying second, there was silence. Then, I leaned in close, my lips almost touching the freezing metal, and whispered, "Be still." A wave of nausea washed over me. I turned and practically ran back to the office, slamming the door and locking it behind me. I didn't stop shaking for an hour. The 3 a.m. round was worse. As I walked, I heard a faint, high-pitched whimpering. It sounded like a child crying. It was coming from behind the door of Autopsy Suite A. Rule 5 flashed in my mind. It is residual energy, harmless as long as you do not acknowledge it. I gritted my teeth, fixed my eyes on the far wall, and kept walking. The crying followed me, seeming to plead, to beg for my attention. I ignored it. I completed my round and locked myself back in the office, my shirt soaked with sweat despite the cold. At 3:35 a.m., the elevator at the top of the stairs whirred to life. My head snapped up. Rule 7, the delivery. I watched the monitors. 2 figures in blue scrubs emerged from the stairwell, pushing a gurney. Just as the rule stated, they were silent, their faces obscured by surgical masks and caps. They moved with an eerie, practiced efficiency. I stepped out and unlocked locker number 12. The air that puffed out smelled of nothing, a sterile void. They slid the shrouded body from the gurney into the locker without a word. The form was small, disturbingly so. They closed the door, turned, and left, their footsteps receding up the stairs. Now for my part. I walked to locker number 12. The steel was already frosting over. I placed my palm flat against it. It felt like touching a block of dry ice. "Welcome home," I said, my voice cracking. "May your story find its ending here." As the last word left my lips, I felt a tremor, a single deep vibration through the metal, like a sigh. And then, silence. The rest of the night passed in a blur of terror. I saw her, the nurse, just a glimpse on the monitor at the far end of the hall, her white uniform stark against the shadows. I immediately looked away, my heart pounding, and focused on the logbook, refusing to look at the screens again, just as Rule 8 dictated. By the time 7 a.m. arrived, I was a wreck. I punched out, fled up the stairs into the grey morning light, and didn't stop walking until I was 3 blocks away, gasping in the cool air like a drowned man. The money was insane, but was it worth this? Desperation answered for me, yes. For 2 weeks, I held the line. I became a machine of the rules. I walked my rounds, I knocked twice, I whispered my incantations. I ignored the crying from Suite A and averted my eyes from the ghostly nurse, who appeared more and more frequently. I welcomed the silent deliveries. I was surviving. I was getting paid. I thought I had it figured out. I thought the rules were a perfect system. But systems can break. It was a Tuesday, the start of my 3rd week. The night started as usual. 1 a.m. round. Nothing. I was almost complacent. The 3 a.m. round was my undoing. I was walking the corridor, flashlight beam cutting the dark, when I heard the knocking. It was from a different locker this time, number 19. I stopped. I approached. My heart was steady. I was a professional now. I raised my fist. Knock, knock. I leaned in to whisper the words, but before I could, I heard another sound, a soft, wet, scraping sound. From inside the locker, my blood ran cold. The rules didn't say anything about a scraping sound. I hesitated. My whisper caught in my throat, and then a voice, a thin, reedy whisper that seemed to press right into my ear, though I was a foot away from the door. So cold. It was the voice of an old woman, frail and terrified. It wasn't residual energy. It was immediate. It was real. It broke through my carefully constructed wall of detachment. A person was in there. A person was cold. My logical mind screamed that they were dead, that this was impossible. But the voice, it was so real. I broke a rule. Not one on the list, but an unspoken one. I answered. "I'm sorry," I whispered back. The moment I said it, the scraping stopped. The cold from the locker door seemed to intensify, leaching the heat from my body. A profound silence fell over the corridor, heavier and more menacing than before. I felt a change in the atmosphere, a shift in pressure. I had done something wrong, terribly wrong. I scrambled back to the office and locked the door. I stared at the monitors, my hands shaking. The corridor was empty, but it didn't feel empty anymore. The air on the screens looked thicker, the shadows deeper. At 3:33 a.m., the elevator whirred, the delivery. But this time, when the orderlies came, something was different. They were still silent, but their movements were jerky, frantic. They practically threw the gurney's occupant into locker number 12 and fled without even looking at me. I went to perform the ritual. I placed my hand on the cold steel. "Welcome home. May your story find its ending here." This time, there was no gentle sigh. There was a loud, sharp bang from inside the locker, as if the body had been hurled against the door. I fell back, crying out in shock. Then I heard it. From down the hall, locker number 19, the one I had spoken to. A faint, rhythmic thumping began. It was slow at first, then faster. It was joined by another from a locker further down, and another. Thump, 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 thump. Within a minute, the entire corridor was filled with a cacophony of frantic, desperate pounding from inside the refrigerated tombs. It was the sound of dozens of fists beating against steel, a chorus of the dead demanding release. The rules were broken. The silence was gone. Panic seized me. I sprinted back to the office. The pounding grew louder, echoing through the concrete, shaking the very foundations of the room. I stared at the monitors, horrified. The steel doors of the lockers were visibly bowing outwards with each impact, denting, their latches straining. Then, the monitor for Autopsy Suite A flickered. The crying I had always ignored was now a full-throated, agonized scream. The door to the suite, A heavy thing I'd never seen move slowly creaked open. A deep shadow spilled out of it, a void that my flashlight beam couldn't have hoped to penetrate. My eyes darted to the monitor for the far end of the hall. The nurse was there, but she wasn't standing still anymore. She was walking towards the camera, slowly, deliberately. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and as she got closer, I saw her face. Her eyes and mouth were black, gaping holes, pits of absolute nothingness. Rule 8. Go back to the office, lock the door, and do not look at the security monitors until sunrise. I had looked. I heard a new sound, overriding the pounding. It was my name. Leo. It wasn't a loved one's voice. It was a chorus. A dozen, 100 voices all whispering my name from the corridor. They were learning. I had given them a piece of me. My name was the key. Let us in, Leo. The handle on the office door began to jiggle. Then it began to turn, back and forth violently. A heavy thud struck the door, then another. They were outside. I backed away, stumbling over my chair. My eyes fell on the logbook. I flipped through the pages, seeing the entries from the guards before me. Quick, scrawled notes. Heard scratching. Nurse appeared at 2:17. Delivery was heavy tonight. Then I saw the last entry from Arthur. It's my last night. The new man starts tomorrow. He seems desperate. He'll do. The silence must be kept. Someone must always be here to keep it. That is the final, unwritten rule. The watcher becomes the watched. I am free. The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a job. It was a sentence. Arthur hadn't escaped. He had found his replacement. Me. The rules weren't just to protect the watchman. They were to contain the residents. To keep them pacified. My single, compassionate whisper had been a spark in a powder keg. A screech of tortured metal echoed from the hall. I looked at the monitor for locker number 19. The latch had broken. The heavy steel door was swinging slowly, eerily open. A long skeletal arm, draped in scraps of a funeral shroud, snaked out from the darkness within, its fingers clawing at the air. The power in the office flickered. The lights buzzed, died, then came back on. On the monitors, every single locker door was now open. Shrouded figures were shuffling out into the corridor. Some were bent and broken. Some moved with a terrifying, unnatural speed. They all turned their heads, as one, towards the security office. Towards me. The nurse was right outside the window now, her face pressed against the glass. The black voids of her eyes stared into mine. She raised a hand and knocked on the glass. Twice, just as I had knocked on the locker. The door to the office splintered under a massive impact. The lock burst. The door flew open. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I'm scrawling it in the logbook in the final moments before they take me. Maybe I survived, and this is a warning. Or maybe I'm sitting here, in this chair, waiting for the next desperate fool to answer the job listing. Waiting to train them, to show them the rules, and to finally pass the key and the curse to someone else. The noises have stopped. It's quiet again. A deep, listening quiet. They're waiting for me to make my rounds. They know my name. They are no longer silent. And I have a new rule to follow, whispered to me from the black pits of a nurse's eyes. I must feed the silence. And tonight, a new delivery is coming. I just have to open the door and welcome them home.